In this video, we're going to be explaining how to get the most out of our assessment by using our student workbooks along with our other resources. So the first thing we did was take all of the various GCSE specifications and study them in depth. We broke them down spec point by spec point and determined which concepts logically went together. We considered the order of these concepts to make sure your students' knowledge was built up in a sensible and holistic way over time. And finally, we put everything back together again into a number of what we refer to as student learning records. The number and name of these student records varies slightly depending on the exam board, but be assured they cover the entire content of the specification. For each structured learning record, we created a student workbook. This is effectively a PowerPoint presentation the students fill out as they go through this topic. We're currently looking at the first slide of a typical student workbook. The screenshots are taken from an AQA version, but they're laid out in an identical fashion for the other exam boards. At the top is the header, which lets you know the unit number and the name of the topic. We then list the specification or learning outcomes, and these are related directly to the topic. These are the areas the student should have studied and understood by the time they've completed this workbook. We also provide here a handy reference to the PG Online textbook, which is the course textbook that we recommend here at Craig and Dave, and also a link to our flipped classroom videos on YouTube. The slides that follow are a series of activities and tasks for the students to complete. If you're following the Craig and Dave resources, the PowerPoints you show in lessons point out to students which activities and slides they should complete at certain points. This progresses for a number of lessons or weeks until you've finished the topic. Here's an example of what some of the activities might look like when completed by a student. Now, although we've structured this quite heavily because of course it's GCSE, they can answer here in a variety of different ways. And in the next section, we look at how you assess what the student's done. So the penultimate slide of every workbook is the all-important assessment slide. There's a box at the top for you to put a target grade if this is something that your school does. Of course, if you don't expose target grades to your students, you can simply remove it. There's then a section which covers the minimum expectations that students should have by the end of the unit. The first point is always an instruction to our key terminology PowerPoint, which is part of the premium subscription and goes over the terms which they should know and be familiar with. They should of course have completed all the pages of the workbook, and we also provide a separate end of topic test. The idea here being that they score 80% or more. Of course, you could change this value if you wished. We then provide 3 columns for you to use to assess the workbook against. The first is breadth. So this is simply how much of the work have they completed. All aspects, most of them, some or little. The next column is depth. A student may well have completed all aspects of the workbook, but they might have done it to a very basic level of depth or little depth at all. Answers could be quite short. There may be some diagrams which are inaccurate. Finally, we have a section for understanding. Look at the breadth and depth together to determine what level you feel the student understands the topic. When you look at their workbook as a teacher, you can then tick these various toggle boxes. They work when you run the presentation and they save them. You can then provide an overall grade to the students. Of course, there's a section down the bottom where you can provide some feedback to the students in terms of actions you'd like them to take or various comments you have. And of course, the ability for students to respond to your feedback and say what they would improve. The last slide of every student workbook is a reflection or revision checklist. This section outlines a bunch of I can statements where the students can choose what level of confidence they have, and of course this can become an excellent revision tool when they turn to revision at the end of year 11. As mentioned previously, every Craig and Dave topic comes with an end of topic test for which we also provide the answers, and you can additionally capture this on the assessment page. We hope this has given you a nice guide on how to use our workbooks to assess the material from Craig and Dave resources.